Well, welcome everybody to our day after Christmas Recovery Live. I want to welcome my co-host Alicia from Auburn, California. How was
Hello.
Christmas? How was Christmas?
It was awesome. Glad
Yeah,
it's over. I'm not a big holiday person.
yeah. No,
Just not. Let's move on.
like
New year,
if
new
you
you.
if you knew Alicia, you would not even be one bit surprised. And she's not a holiday person. Alicia
No.
lives a
Too
simple
many
life.
parties, too many socials, which are great,
Yeah.
but it's just not my jam. It's
A
just
lot of people.
a lot of people.
Yeah,
A lot
a
of people
lot
who
of
are
people.
converted addict.
Well, I was in North Carolina for a few days, and then came back for today, and heading into Brooklyn a little later to be with my sister. But Christmas, another one down. But we wanted to bring you a recovery live here on day after Christmas, and it'll be a little bit of a shortened version today because we know everybody's still probably on their day off, settling in from whatever food they ate, or at the stores returning stuff that they got, trying to take advantage of
Right.
some sales. We do
Getting
want to talk about our virtual retreats coming up. It's our next big event, and so it's going to be on January 5th through the 7th, our virtual retreat. And every year it seems to be very, very popular. So um, um, don't delay in signing up for this. It's 3 days. You can do it right from the couch at your house. And we do have a special deal going on, which Cass is going to put in the banner.
a $10 off discount until January 1st.
Well, $10 off, right? New
There's
Year
the
10.
code.
And guys, somebody might say, it's virtual. We're sitting on computers. Why are you charging money? It really covers some of the costs that it takes us to run the StreamYard and things behind the scenes and cast. And there's a little bit, it's just cost and a little bit to help us be able to keep the message going. So the cost is not about anybody making any money. It's about us covering our costs and being able to keep this mission going. So again, if you have a big issue with it, give us a call, send us an email, talk to Cass. We'll see if we can work something out. But
And
New Year 10.
Some of it might be a mindset thing that people can ask themselves. This question is, it's not spending money, it's an investment, and you're getting recovered. So maybe that's worth something to pay something. You'd be
I love
recovered.
that, Alicia. I mean, it's an investment for sure. If it was the thing that got you recovered and freed your life up, what would it be worth to you?
Right.
And then
And
what
there's
we do,
people, we have videos online that show people that got recovered from a virtual retreat. They didn't do it in person.
right? And then what would you do then to help spread that message to somebody else? And in a lot of cases, it takes a lot of volunteer and a lot of people's efforts and a lot of people, but it does take some money. We can't only go so far without some support, as many of our attendees have gotten generous support and now have come back to try to help us support. So 5th through the 7th of January is our virtual retreat. You can sign up online and we'll see you there. It's easy, right from your armchair. We did it right during the pandemic. It was very successful. And actually,
You did it
our
all
leader,
20, didn't you?
we did 15 of them total
Mm-hmm.
between 20 and 21. We did a few more into 21. We, several of our senior leaders started out on virtual. So it worked. They have since come on ground, but they went a long time just coming off the virtual and had helped us and been involved and had the great effect in their life that we all have experienced.
Yeah. And like Dee had said, if they didn't see the last one, with virtual, some people might have pets that they don't have people that can watch, so they can do it from home. They might not have childcare for the whole time, so they can kind of keep the kids at bay and when they can be on the computer. So there's those things that make it a lot easier for some people that cannot do in person.
Right. I just came back from Orlando, Alicia, yesterday. One of the foundations that does support us had us down to speak at their gala. And when I told them there were 40 people on their knees in doing a third step, they stopped me and said, "Wait a minute, what'd you say?" you had 40 people on their knees? I said, yeah, well, yeah. And they were quite astonished that those kind of things happen at our retreats. And, one of the things that was really interesting is a bunch of the people came up to me afterwards. These are like all these donors that donated to the Heart of the City, which is a very philanthropic, great foundation in Central Florida that does a lot of great things. One of them helping to support us was they couldn't believe how like transparent I was and vulnerable and how open, like announcing myself as a recovered alcoholic and talking. They're like, that takes a lot of bravery. Like, we don't think about that. Like, I don't even think that I'm brave to be out there saying it. I say,
I know, but we're used to it too, right?
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
saying it for 29 years, but yeah, a lot of people, my own husband says, oh, you're, so honest about that stuff. And I'm used to it. And I can go up to someone, not like inappropriately, but like, yeah, I suffered with alcoholism and eating disorders and overexercise, and let's get to the root. And that's another thing too, that irked me with people that aren't in addiction, because they don't talk about, I feel, this is me, they just talk about nothing when I'm used to talking about deep stuff. Right. So at parties, like the holidays, I said it's not my favorite because I don't want to talk about the freaking weather. I'm over that. Let's talk about what's keeping you in bondage and why are you running to the cookies? And they just like, they don't want to talk about it. But it's interesting. About the freaking weather.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that. I have found myself less and less tolerant of just small talk.
I'm just
let's just get together. Like, I know.
I don't care about
how's it going? What's going on? And they started to tell me about, well, we just put a new room on our house and we just did it. I don't care.
Well, some of that needs to be needed, but if that's all we talk about,
right?
Like no, thank you.
And just kind of fluffy stuff, right? I hear you. Can we talk about the deep stuff? Well,
but then I'm the weird person, and I get it, because out of all of them, I'm the only one that wants to really talk about that stuff. So that's when I have to kind of like sit back and say, well, they're not used to that. They don't talk about that stuff in public like they should.
Yeah, and you're a little weird.
Totally. That's fine.
Okay. You should have seen her running at Malibu up and down the hills in like 40-mile-an-hour winds. She ran anyway.
Up and down the hills. I stayed up top. I stayed up top.
Still, the wind was hard up there.
It was, but it needs to be done.
So, yeah. The discipline in the dictionary should just have a picture of Alicea.
Yep.
I'm going to be there.
Anyway. It's not always discipline either, because I didn't want to do it. It was routine. It's like, I do it. So here I go.
It's a habit. It's a routine, but that's good.
Yeah. And I felt so good after.
Yeah. Well, let's, I think, guys, what we were going to talk about today is what we are going to talk a little bit about today is a book called The 4 Agreements. And it's something that I hadn't heard of. And Alicea, like, quick said, we got to do this. Da, da, da. And really interesting, Alicea, when I was flying home from California, there was a woman sitting next to me on the plane, and she saw the 4 agreements I slid it in the seat pocket in front of me because I was I was taking it out of my book bag to read on the plane. And she looked right over. Oh, I love that book. That book is so great. For a year, I sent that to everyone I know. Everybody got that book. I'm like,
yeah.
It was missing
really big. I've heard a lot about it, not lately, but it's good. And it's short. It's not a big read. It's pretty simple. I wish it would go deeper, but it's good.
Yeah.
We need people.
I'll tell you how I was surprised is Sue Foreman. I stayed at the Foreman's while I was in Florida, and I was telling her about it, and she'd never heard of it. And I would have thought of all the people that would have heard of this book, it would be Sue Foreman.
Well, it's not deep enough for her.
Right.
This is like,
yeah, she sent me back with a book called Healing Something in the Mental Age, which is very detailed. There's stuff I love too, and very tangential to what we do.
More simple, which is good. It kind of makes you think of the 4 agreements, which we'll get into. But if you want like substantial, deep, and how and all that stuff, this won't do it for you.
Right. So the premise of the book, everybody, and I think that with our short time today, we're going to kind of do an introduction, Alicea, and then maybe we'll go deep in it
We'll
in
touch
a
on agreement, I think.
in a future episode. But the premise is that we make these agreements with ourselves in our brains, in our minds. And these agreements that we do work like a book of law or rules of our mind. And the way we're raised, the attention that we pay and the focus is we learn it by what we're taught in our environment and where we live and who talks to us and who teaches us. And at a young age, we begin to start making these agreements with ourselves, and it dictates our behavior. And it's this rule of law that goes in. Some people might call it trauma.
Right. Beliefs,
might call it,
I mean, limited beliefs or good beliefs. We're taking these things because we see from our own behavior, oh, I got attention by doing that. I got to do that. I need to be quiet because my parents, blah, 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 blah. So that's your belief. And it's all stemming from how we grew up. Yeah.
I mean, think about this. I'm writing about this a little bit, and I'm using the analogy of looking through binoculars. Okay. If you look through binoculars, if that was your only field of view and you open your eyes and you were looking through binoculars, the only thing that would affect anything you do or anything you think about would be what you can see through the binoculars. So you'd have this limited field of view. It would go only so far out and so far wide. And nothing outside of it would have any influence on any of your decision making. You wouldn't know anything about it. So your life goes through your rule of law based on everything you see through your binocular. But everyone has their own.
That's where the problem lies.
So, right. So there is a way to remove the binocular. How do we remove it and become aware that, wait, first of all, what we saw isn't the only thing there is to see. And it also may or may not be true. It may or may not need to apply to us. It may or may not be good for us. And we certainly don't have to be bound by it because there is more than the binocular, right? It's behind us. I mean, there is, once we see, wow, there's more.
But that takes a lot of awareness, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it takes honesty. And we need to recognize that maybe some of my beliefs are not helping me, but they have to see that.
Right.
And be open to the possibility that maybe we have a chance to change it. There's something we can do.
And, you know, this whole idea that we're kind of programmed by our environment is backed now by lots of science and lots of psychology and lots of books. The myth of normal talks tons and tons about that we can be predisposed based on environment to addiction and some other things, but we're not necessarily predetermined. They found no genetic code that says there's a gene that says you're going to be an addict.
Right.
They've not identified it.
That's like our genetics can load the gun, but then our environment and people around us and our thoughts pull the trigger.
Right. So epigenetics is the turning on or off of a series of the genes in a certain way. And that's all done through environment. Exactly. And this is all pretty, and the telomeres gets, you know, it's very deep, guys. Just trust us that some of this stuff we're talking about, which sounds very, you know, maybe ethereal, has science to it.
Too big. I think people can be like, yeah, I see that.
Yeah, I see. Yeah. All right. Well, all right. That's good. Because I'm writing about that, the binocular effect, and then what happens, how to break it, and what happens once you break it, and how does it limit you, and how are you now not limited once that's removed? And the 12 steps can do that as one of the tools. So let's talk about the 4 agreements. So the book talks about this condition we're in that results from our environment. That's got us pigeonholed in a set of rules that may or may not help us. So this gives us these 4 agreements that we can make that help us break our other agreements and make these 4 new ones. Now, both Alicea and I would like to know about what we're supposed to do about it and how, because it doesn't really tell us that.
No, but it's a good start to make you think.
So
Totally.
the first one is be impeccable
With your word.
with your word. And impeccability, it gives a definition of it that I had no idea that was the root definition of impeccability, but it really means, you know, absolute truth as much as we can. Impeccable, say what we mean and mean what we say, and have nothing that breaks anyone down or causes harm or causes right. I mean, difficult
Right.
to
But
do it.
this
You know?
is so perfect with our defects of character, right?
Right.
Honesty and dishonesty and all those things that come up. This would be a tool of aiming to be impeccable with your word. Because obviously we can't be impeccable 100% of the time, perfect. We can't. But it's
No.
something to aim for and to look at, like, am I impeccable? And that would be a step 10, right? Looking at,
Yeah.
whoa, I
Yeah.
see
I mean,
this.
working towards it anyway. Right.
Yeah, it's a goal.
So,
Mhm.
I want to go back a second to say, and you said this at one of the retreats in one of the step classes you took. You grabbed this quote, and I love it. It's usually it's not what we don't know that hurts us. It's what we know that's not true that hurts us
So we think
more.
it's true,
What
right?
we think
Yeah.
is true, right? So I really it was deep when he said in the book. He says, "Truth is what you see." It's the absolute truth. When we look at the computer, everything in this room is absolute truth. The picture on the wall, the light, there's no ambiguity to it. It's absolutely true what we see. You are true. You
But
sitting there is true.
right. But then the stories that we tell or the beliefs we have about the things, that's where we go haywire.
That's where it goes. But so we do have truth in front of us,
Mhm.
and you can't. I thought that is true. True. So are we enslaved by our words or can we be freed by them? We can really be freed. It talks about if we are impeccable with our word, it makes us not susceptible to so much damage that we do to ourselves by putting forth a lot of energy in judgment and analysis and protective phases and all kinds of stuff.
Right. And not only the words that we speak into people or speak to people or about people with other people, which is really important, and speaking something and then doing it, like, are we walking the walk and we talking the talk? But also all the words that we have in here that aren't spoken, the
All right.
negativity, the negative talk, that we need to look at outward words and all the words that are mostly in here.
Because
That
we see the truth and then we make all these decisions about it. Like, I'm going to get on a train into New York City in a little while. I'm going to get on a train with a bunch of people. And based on my rule of law in my book and things I've been trained and seen and done, I'll look at everybody and
they'll be in your way or they'll be
yeah, there'll be something I'll formulate about them when the only truth is here's this person right here who is a perfect autonomous person who has every right to be whatever they are and should have nothing to do, really doesn't have and shouldn't have the power to cause me to have any anxiety at all until they do, if they do something overt. But lots to think about. The second one is don't take anything personally. Oh, well, yeah. Because if we're not going to make judgments of other people because that's all it is, why do we take the judgment? If someone says to us, you're stupid, if you believe it, I mean, we should take nothing personally because no one has the right to define us.
right. This says on page 49, personal importance or taking things personally is the maximum expression of selfishness because we make the assumption that everything is about me. So that's the problem. If we're taking everything personally, then we're selfish because not everything is about you. And we make everything about us. And they're looking at me weird because it's all about me. Well, maybe they're not looking at you at all, or what they said, you're making it mean something based on your past trauma, and maybe that's not what they meant.
You mean it's not all about you and me?
No, it's not.
Uh,
But again, we
so,
have to have awareness of that. We have to ask ourselves, am I taking things personally? Let me think of my thoughts and look at what I'm saying all day long and see, oh, I took that personally. I'm taking that personally. And we'll probably see other people doing the same thing. That's another thing. The more I do work on myself, the more I see how other people
right.
are not working on themselves.
I get I get hurt with expectations, which they say are just premeditated resentments. I
Yeah.
use my rule of law, the agreements I have in my head, I've already determined what needs to do to make me happy, and then but overlay it on what people do. And when they don't, you assume they did it on purpose. And why don't they know? Or why aren't they? And why are they responsible for that anyway? Right? It's a big thing. So deep, guys, that we could go in. But let's go to the third one. So we got to be impeccable with our word. We got to not take anything personal. These are these four big things, kind of like the four absolutes, where there really are high bars,
Right.
just
That we are
ones to
just
work
aiming
towards.
for. We
Right.
can't be perfect, but we can aim for
Right.
them.
And the next one is don't
And
make assumptions.
that's a big one.
I love this. The way to keep yourself from making assumptions is to ask questions, right? Make sure the communication is clear. If you don't understand, ask. Have the courage to ask questions until it's clear as you can be. And even when they don't assume you know all there is to know about a given situation. Once you hear the answer, you'll not have to make assumptions because you will know the truth.
Which is hard to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because, for an example, there's someone in my life who constantly says, well, she did this and this girl did this and then I'll say, well, you're assuming that XYZ.
Right.
Well, no, that's right. Well, did you ask her? No. So it's hard because we do that, and it would be like if I was doing that and assuming something, I take that on as true. I personally would be embarrassed to be asking that person, did you mean this? Because then it shows them that's very vulnerable to ask somebody that
Right. It's true.
because it's either they say yes, and then what do I do with that? Or they say no, and it shows how insecure and assumption making I was. So either way, it's really hard.
And it's hard not to make
That's why
assumptions.
I'm saying in the book, I'm like, well, how do you do it? Give me more details. Don't make
What?
assumptions. Oh yeah,
Right.
whatever. How do you
What?
do it?
What do assumptions do? They make out of you and me, right?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, if I didn't take it, half of the stuff I take personally is because I made assumptions,
Exactly. Those are
right?
close feelings.
And then we aren't impeccable because then our word follows all along on this. See how this goes, guys, or doesn't go?
Yeah.
All right.
So,
And the last one is always do your best. I like this, taking action, do the action. Not because you're expecting reward, just do the right thing. I often will say to somebody, if they have this big issue, I say, okay, serenity prayer is kind of like that. The wisdom to know the difference, do the right. To say, all right, here's your situation. Is there anything you can do about it? If they say yes, are you doing it? Are you doing everything you can do? I am. Then you got to let it go. Or you got to be at peace, right? Do your best to understand it and let it go. Always do your best, and your best is your best. Like your best is your best.
Right. And I think it was I'm mixing other books together. But like when you're sick, your best is going to be way different than when I'm not sick. So you have to like take that into account. Like what's my best today is going to be different probably than when I'm in another state or doing something else. So we have to have grace for ourselves and patience of your best is going to look different all the time.
But I struggle because sometimes I don't think I do my best. I think I'm pulled by laziness, by selfishness, by, get sucked into just things that make you feel good. And then you get into judgment and all this stuff. But I would say I don't always do my best. I think I could step it up a notch. I think maybe that's good that I know that. I do know to do my best, but that would be something I would really want to work on, is to always do my best in every situation. Some categories of my life, I'm on top of it, And some I think I could work on doing my best at. I'm just being honest. I'm
Yeah.
not.
That's part of step 10, right? And
Yeah.
11.
Yeah.
There's always something to
Mm.
get better on. And so
Um,
I could say I do my best in exercising and keeping up with that. Totally check. But with relationships and communication, I lack in that.
so
that part.
So look at this, how this might line up to the four absolutes. Be impeccable with your word, right? Be honest. Honesty, right? It's dead honest might be. Don't take anything personal. Unselfish. It says you're maximally selfish when you take things personal and assume. Pure in your motives. Don't make any assumptions. Make sure you know everything. And do everything in love. Do your best. Maybe look at that.
Yeah.
The four absolutes. Things to work towards, guys. Being impeccable with your word. Don't take anything personally. Don't make assumptions and always do your best. Great agreements to make with yourself, which can help you break the old agreements and free you from a bunch of stuff that has us in bondage and help us enjoy a life of peace and serenity without agitation.
Yes.
We got to go deeper into this, Alicea, and at a later, maybe we'll do our next one. We'll do this. Maybe we should pull some of these things together off of the few books that we read and kind of do our own little thing to see how these different things work together to help people see. But the book is called The Four Absolutes. It's
4 agreements.
4 agreements. I mean, see where I went? That was Freudian or whatever, right? It's a small book. It's easy. I mean, I'm half through it in 2 days, and
it's on Audible as well, I believe, and it's on YouTube actually for free. You can listen to it instead of buying it on Audible. You can listen to it on YouTube. Someone reads it all the way through, and it only is over an hour. That's it.
Nothing.
It's easy read.
So we're going to wrap it up right there, guys. We know a lot of people are off between Christmas and New Year's. I know that we try to be off, but the virtual retreat is coming, so there's some work going on. But we're going to rest with some more family that's in town for me, especially my brother comes into town tomorrow. So some family I don't see that often, and take a little break before the new year. 2024 is coming. We got so much exciting stuff, guys, in 2024. Bunch of shelter programs. We're going to be in New York City with mocktail hours. We're going to have master classes. We're going to have retreats in Malibu and in California. And we got one in Manhattan, and we're going to have them in Florida. We're going to be all over the place. So stay tuned for Recovery Live. We'll see you next Tuesday, day after New Year's, at 10 a.m. East Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. in the UK. Have a great rest of the week, and until we see you again, Happy New Year, everybody.
Bye.
Peace.